The war had lasted 5 years. 5 long years of blood, fire, and death across dozens of worlds. Humanity had fought hard, but the Empire was old and powerful. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were stronger. Their soldiers had been fighting wars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Stood in the large meeting room of the Earth Defense Council. He was a simple lieutenant, nothing special. He had joined the military because his family was poor, and it was the only way to get an education. He had never expected to become important. He had never wanted to become important. But now, every eye in the room was looking at him. "You want me to do what?" he asked, his voice quiet. Admiral Park, the highest-ranking officer in the human fleet, looked at him with tired eyes. The old man had not slept well in years. The war had aged him badly. "They have offered peace," the admiral said, "but they have conditions." "What conditions?" asked, though he already felt something cold growing in his stomach. "They want a marriage, a political union between our species. Their princess will marry a human soldier." Looked around the room. There were hundreds of officers in the fleet, thousands of soldiers. Why him? He was nobody. "Why me?" he asked. A woman in a gray suit stepped forward. She was from the diplomatic corps. Her name was, and she had spent the last 3 months talking to trying to find any path to peace. "They do not think like us," she explained. "They do not value rank or power the same way. They chose you specifically." "But why?" pressed. Hesitated. "During the Battle of Sector 7 you were captured. Do you remember?" Remembered. He had been held for 3 weeks in a prison ship. It was not a time he liked to think about. "The princess was on that ship," continued. "She was observing human prisoners as part of her studies. You caught her attention." "I never even saw her," said. "She saw you. She watched you share your food with other prisoners. She watched you give your blanket to a wounded man. She watched you stand between the guards and a young soldier they wanted to beat." Paused. "They do not understand such behavior. To them it is strange. Fascinating. The princess requested you by name." Felt sick. He had just been trying to help his fellow soldiers. He had not been trying to impress anyone. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Admiral Park's face became hard. "Then the war continues. We lose. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually we lose. The will burn Earth. Everyone you have ever known will die." The room was silent, could hear his own heartbeat. "It is just a political marriage," said, trying to sound gentle. "You will live in the palace. You will attend ceremonies. You will smile for cameras, but you do not have to love her. You do not even have to like her. You just have to exist." "For how long?" asked. "The treaty says 10 years. After that, the marriage can be dissolved and you can return to Earth." 10 years. 10 years in an alien palace, married to a princess he had never met, surrounded by people who had been trying to kill him just weeks ago. But the alternative was the death of his entire species. "I'll do it," said. 3 weeks later stood on the surface of Prime, the home world of the Empire. The planet was beautiful in a cold way. The buildings were made of white stone and silver metal. The sky was purple, and 3 moons hung in the distance. Everything was clean and perfect and completely without warmth. Thousands had gathered to watch the ceremony. They were tall beings, almost 8 feet in height. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were large and silver. They moved with grace like dancers. They were beautiful, but their beauty was the beauty of ice and winter. Wore a simple black uniform. The Earth government had wanted him to wear something more impressive, but he had refused. He was not going to pretend to be something he was not. The Emperor sat on a throne at the top of a long flight of stairs. He was ancient, his face lined with countless years. He looked at the way a person might look at an insect that had wandered into their home. There was no hate in his eyes. There was no anger. There was simply nothing, was not worth his emotions. And then the princess arrived. Princess walked through the crowd like a blade cutting through water. She was tall, even for and her skin was a deeper blue than the others. Her hair was white and fell past her shoulders like silk. Her eyes were the color of liquid silver, and they held no warmth at all. She was the most beautiful woman had ever seen. She was also the coldest. Stopped in front of him. She was a full head taller than him, and she looked down at him without expression. "So you are the human," she said. Her voice was smooth and clear like music, but there was no feeling in it. "My name is," he said. "I know your name." She turned away from him and walked toward the altar where the ceremony would take place. She did not look back to see if he was following. The ceremony was long and complicated. There were words spoken in the language that did not understand. There were rituals involving colored lights and strange instruments. At one point, he and had to press their palms together while an old priest chanted over them. Her hand was cold. Her face remained empty. When it was over, they were declared married in the eyes of the Empire. The crowd did not cheer. They simply watched in silence as was led away to his new home. The palace was enormous. His quarters were in the east wing, far from the main residence. He had a bedroom, a sitting room, and a small garden with strange alien flowers. It was comfortable enough, but it was also clearly meant to keep him away from everything important. A servant, a young male named, was assigned to him. Was one of the few who had spent time among humans, and he spoke their language well. "The princess will not visit you often," explained on the first day. "You are not expected to attend most court functions. Your role is simply to exist, to prove that the marriage is real." "So I'm a decoration," said. Hesitated. "That is not an inaccurate description." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "At least you're honest." Days passed. Weeks. Saw only at official events where they stood together and pretended to be something they were not. She never spoke to him more than necessary. She never looked at him with anything but cold indifference. He learned to fill his time. He walked in the gardens. He read books, using a translation device to understand texts. He exercised in his quarters, keeping his body strong even though there was no war left to fight. Sometimes he watched the go about their lives. They were efficient people. They did not waste time on small talk or kindness. Every action had a purpose. Every word had meaning. There was no room in their culture for the simple pleasures that humans enjoyed. Found it lonely. One night, about a month after the wedding, was walking in the outer gardens. It was late, and the 3 moons cast strange shadows across the white stone paths. He liked this time, when the palace was quiet and he could pretend he was alone. He heard footsteps behind him and turned. Stood there watching him. She wore a simple robe instead of her usual formal clothes, and her white hair was loose around her shoulders. For just a moment she looked almost normal. "You walk here often," she said. It was not a question. "It's peaceful," replied. She studied him with those silver eyes. "You are strange, human." "My name is." "I know your name." "Then use it." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, anger, he could not tell, but she did not look away. "Why do you not hate me?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. "Why would I hate you?" We killed millions of your people. We destroyed your colonies. We almost ended your species." Thought about it, she was right. He had every reason to hate her. He had lost friends in the war. He had seen things that still gave him nightmares. But when he looked at her, he did not see a monster. He saw a woman who had been raised in a cold world, taught to hide her feelings, forced into a marriage she did not want any more than he did. "The war is over," he said simply. "Hating you will not bring back the dead. It will only make both of us miserable." Stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. But the next night she was there again. And the night after that. They did not talk much. Sometimes they simply walked together in silence, but something had shifted between them. The ice around was beginning to show cracks. did not know what it meant. He did not know if it meant anything at all. But for the first time since coming to Prime, he did not feel quite so alone. The servants noticed. They whispered to each other when they thought he could not hear. The human and the princess walking together at night. It was strange. It was unusual. It was the beginning of something none of them understood. And somewhere in the vast palace, the emperor received reports about his daughter's behavior. He said nothing. He simply watched and waited and wondered what this small human was doing to his cold, perfect daughter. The treaty had brought peace. The marriage had sealed it, but something else was growing now, something neither species had planned for. Something that would change everything. 3 months had passed since the wedding. The purple sky of Prime had become familiar too. The cold beauty of the palace no longer seemed so strange. He had learned to find comfort in the small things. The way the alien flowers in his garden bloomed at night. The sound of distant music that sometimes drifted through the corridors. The quiet moments when the world felt almost peaceful. But comfort was not the same as belonging. Knew he would never truly belong here. They treated him with careful politeness. They bowed when required. They spoke to him when necessary. But behind their silver eyes he could see what they really thought. He was an outsider, a curiosity, a pet that their princess had been forced to keep. Did not let it bother him. He had faced worse things than cold looks and silent judgment. His nightly walks with continued. At first they barely spoke. She would appear from the shadows, fall into step beside him, and they would circle the gardens in silence. But slowly, gradually, words began to fill the quiet spaces. "Why do you keep your garden so messy?" she asked one night, looking at the flowers growing wild in his small personal space. Smiled, "It's not messy, it's natural. It is chaotic. That's the point. On Earth, we call it a wild garden. You let things grow the way they want to grow, not the way you think they should." Looked at the tangled plants with confusion, but there is no order, no structure. Not everything needs structure. She was quiet for a long moment. "You used my name. You asked me to use yours. It seems fair." That night she stayed longer than usual. She sat on a stone bench in his garden, watching the flowers sway in the gentle wind, and she did not speak. But there was something different in her posture, something less rigid, as if she was trying to understand what it meant to be wild. The next day, received a visitor. The diplomat who had explained his fate to him back on Earth arrived at the palace as part of a trade delegation. She found time to visit his quarters, and they sat together in his sitting room while served them tea. "You look well," said, "better than I expected." "I'm surviving," replied. "The reports say you and the princess have been spending time together." Raised an eyebrow. "People are writing reports about me." "Of course they are. You are the most important human on Prime. Everything you do is being watched." He sighed. "We just walk in the gardens. There's nothing more to it than that." Studied him carefully. They don't understand humans. They don't understand kindness without purpose. They don't understand friendship without benefit. Whatever you're doing with the princess, they're trying to figure out what you want from her. "I don't want anything from her." "I know, that's what confuses them." After left, thought about her words. He had not been trying to win's trust. He had not been playing some clever political game. He had simply been himself. Kind because kindness was right. Friendly because loneliness was terrible. But to everything was a transaction. Every relationship had terms and conditions. The idea that someone might be good simply for the sake of being good was foreign to them. That night did not come to the garden. Waited for an hour before giving up and returning to his quarters. He told himself it meant nothing. She was a princess. She had duties. She did not owe him her time. But he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning came to him with news. "The princess is ill," the servant said. "She has been confined to her quarters." "What kind of illness?" asked, worry creeping into his voice. I do not know the details. It is a sensitive matter. Can I see her? Looked uncomfortable. That would not be appropriate. You are her husband in name only. The marriage was political. You have no rights to access her private chambers. Wanted to argue, but he knew the servant was right. In the eyes of he was nothing, a symbol, a decoration. He had no power here. But he was still human, and humans did not abandon the people they cared about. Over the next few days, gathered information. He talked to servants, to guards, to anyone who would speak to him. Slowly, he pieced together the truth. Was not physically ill. She was suffering from something they called soul weakness. It was a condition that affected their species when they became emotionally overwhelmed. They were a cold people, but that did not mean they had no feelings. It meant they had learned to suppress those feelings for so long that when they finally emerged, they could be devastating. The doctors did not know how to treat it. In their culture, emotions were problems to be controlled, not expressed. They had no words for comfort. They had no rituals for healing. But did. On the fifth night, when the palace was quiet and the guards were few, made his way to his chambers. He was stopped at the door by two guards, tall and imposing in their silver armor. You cannot enter, one of them said flatly. I am her husband, replied. In name only. Then my name should be enough. The guards looked at each other. They had not expected this. The human was supposed to be quiet, obedient. He was supposed to know his place. If you do not let me through, said calmly, I will make a formal complaint to the emperor. I will tell him that his daughter's own guards prevented her husband from checking on her welfare. I wonder how he will feel about that. It was a bluff, had no idea how the emperor would react, but the guards did not know that. After a long moment, they stepped aside. His chambers were beautiful and cold. White walls, silver furniture, everything perfectly arranged. But the woman lying on the bed was not perfect. She was pale, even for her silver eyes were dull. Her white hair was tangled and unwashed. She looked broken. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice weak. I was worried about you, said simply. You should not be here. This is not your concern. You're my wife. In name only. Pulled a chair to her bedside and sat down. Maybe I want it to be more than that. Stared at him. You don't understand what you're saying. Then explain it to me. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I was not supposed to feel anything for you. This marriage was political, a transaction. You were meant to be nothing more than a symbol, but you, she closed her eyes, you are kind. You are warm. You treat me like a person, not a princess. No one has ever done that before. And that's making you sick, asked gently. My people do not handle emotions well. We are taught from birth to suppress them. To feel is to be weak. But you make me feel, and I do not know what to do with it. Reached out and took her hand. It was cold like always, but she did not pull away. On Earth, he said, we have a saying, feelings are like waves. You cannot stop them from coming. You can only choose how to ride them. That sounds terrifying. It can be, but it can also be beautiful. He stayed with her that night. He did not try to fix her or heal her or tell her what to do. He simply stayed. He held her hand and talked to her about Earth, about his childhood in a small village near the mountains, about his mother's cooking, about the way the sun looked when it set over the ocean. He talked until she fell asleep. The next morning the servants found them together, was still sitting in the chair, his hand in his, both of them peaceful. The news spread through the palace like fire. The human had entered the princess's private chambers. The human had stayed the night. The human had done something no one would ever do. He had shown her compassion. The emperor summoned that afternoon. The old ruler sat on his throne, looking down at the human with those cold, ancient eyes. You my guards, the emperor said. Yes, admitted. You entered my daughter's chambers without permission." "Yes." "Why?" Thought about lying. He thought about making up some political excuse, but he was tired of politics. He was tired of pretending. "Because she was suffering," he said, "and I could help." "How did you know you could help?" "I didn't, but I had to try." The emperor was silent for a long moment. The court watched, waiting for judgment. His fate hung in the balance. Then the emperor spoke. "My daughter is better today. Her doctors say her condition has improved. They cannot explain it." "I can," said. "She needed someone to care about her, not her title, not her power, just her." "They do not operate that way." "Maybe that's the problem." It was bold, perhaps too bold, but had nothing left to lose. The emperor studied him for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. "You may continue to visit my daughter, but remember, human, you are still a guest in this empire. Do not forget your place." "I won't forget," said, "but I also won't abandon her." He turned and walked out of the throne room, feeling 1,000 eyes on his back. That night was waiting for him in the garden. She was still pale, still weak, but she was standing. And when she saw him, something happened that had never seen before. She smiled. It was small, barely visible, but it was there. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For staying." Smiled back. "That's what friends do." "Friends," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "I do not think I have ever had one of those before." "Well, you have one now." They walked together under the 3 moons, and for the first time the silence between them was not cold. It was warm. It was comfortable. It was the beginning of something new. And somewhere in the palace, the emperor watched through the window, and for the first time in centuries, he wondered if perhaps his people had something to learn from these strange, emotional humans. 6 months after the wedding, the palace began to change. It was subtle at first, small things that most people would not notice, but noticed. The servants spoke to him differently. There was less coldness in their voices. Sometimes they even asked him questions about Earth, about human customs, about why humans did the strange things they did. The guards nodded to him when he passed, not with warmth exactly, but with something like respect. And smiled more often now. She still had her cold moments. There were days when she retreated into her shell, when the weight of being a princess became too much. But those days were fewer now. She was learning to feel. She was learning that emotions were not weakness. She was learning to be happy. Found himself caring for her in ways he had not expected. He thought about her when she was not there. He worried about her when she seemed tired. He felt a strange warmth in his chest when she laughed at something he said. He tried not to think too hard about what that meant. One evening came to his quarters instead of meeting him in the garden. She was wearing a simple dress, and her white hair was pulled back in a casual way. She looked almost human. "I want to show you something," she said. She led him through corridors he had never seen before, deep into the heart of the palace. They passed ancient statues and beautiful paintings. They climbed stairs that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached a small door hidden behind a curtain. "This is my private place," said. "No one else knows about it, not even my father." She opened the door, and his breath caught in his throat. It was a room filled with stars. The ceiling was a dome of glass, and through it could see the entire galaxy. Millions of lights sparkled against the darkness. Nebulas glowed in shades of purple and blue. Distant suns burned like tiny fires. "I used to come here as a child," said softly, "when the world became too much, when I needed to remember that I was small." "It's beautiful," whispered. "Yes, it is." They sat together on the floor, looking up at the universe. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then said, "I am glad you are here." "I'm glad I'm here too." She turned to look at him, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "I never thought I would say that to a human, When the war started, I was taught that your species was inferior, savage, dangerous. And now I think we were wrong, not just about humans, about everything. We thought that strength meant having no feelings, that power meant standing alone. But you have shown me that there is another way. Took her hand. It was still cool, but not as cold as before. Every species has things to learn, even humans, maybe especially humans. What do you need to learn? He thought about it. Patience, maybe. Humility. The ability to think before we act. We're good at passion, but sometimes we let it control us instead of guiding us. So we are opposite, said. You feel too much, we feel too little. Maybe that's why this works. This, you mean us? His heart beat faster. I mean, whatever this is, our friendship, our walks, these moments. Was quiet. Then she leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. It was the first time she had ever touched him like that. The first time she had allowed herself to be vulnerable. I think I would like it to be more than friendship, she said quietly. Before could respond, an alarm shattered the peace. Red lights flashed across the palace. Warning signals echoed through the halls. Jumped to her feet, her expression instantly shifting from soft to sharp. What's happening? Asked. I don't know, stay here. She ran for the door but followed. He was not going to let her face danger alone. They burst into the main corridor to find chaos. Servants were running. Guards were shouting orders. Somewhere in the distance heard the sound of weapons fire. A young guard rushed past and grabbed his arm. Report. Assassins, Your Highness. They've breached the outer walls. They're coming for you. His face went pale. Who? We don't know. They're wearing no insignia, but they're well trained. The outer guard is falling back. His military training kicked in. He scanned the corridor, looking for defensive positions, escape routes, anything useful. We need to get you somewhere safe, he said too. The throne room, she replied. It's the most fortified location in the palace. They ran. More guards joined them as they moved through the halls, but the attackers were fast, too fast. Could hear them getting closer, their footsteps echoing behind them. They turned a corner and came face to face with 3 assassins. The attackers were, but their features were hidden behind dark masks. They moved with deadly precision, their weapons already raised. The guards engaged them but could see immediately that they were outmatched. These were not ordinary killers. They were professionals. One guard fell, then another. Tried to run back to help but grabbed her. No, we have to go. They're dying for me. And they want you to live, that's why they're dying. He pulled her down a side corridor, his mind racing. The throne room was too far. They would never make it. He saw a small door ahead, half hidden in the shadows. Storage room, not ideal, but it would have to do. He pushed inside and closed the door behind them. It was dark and cramped, filled with old furniture and forgotten supplies. They'll find us, whispered. Maybe, but we're buying time. Reinforcements will come. They heard footsteps outside, voices speaking in low, urgent tones. The assassins were searching. Pressed his back against the door, ready to fight if necessary. He had no weapon. He was just one human against trained killers, but he would not let them take, not while he still had breath in his body. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Held his breath. Then the door exploded inward. He was thrown back by the force, crashing into and sending them both to the floor. An assassin stepped through the broken doorway, weapon raised. Time seemed to slow. Saw the weapon point at. He saw the assassin's finger tighten on the trigger. He saw death coming for the woman he had grown to care for. And he moved. He threw himself in front of her, his body blocking the shot. The energy blast hit him in the chest, and pain exploded through his entire being. He felt himself falling, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was keeping safe. He hit the ground hard. Blood was pouring from his wound. His vision was fading. But he could hear screaming. He could hear more footsteps, more fighting. The palace guards had arrived. The assassin was being overwhelmed. Then there was silence. His face appeared above him, her silver eyes wide with terror. "Stay with me." "Did they get you?" he whispered, speaking hurt, everything hurt. "No, you saved me. You stupid, wonderful human, you saved me." "Good," he tried to smile. "That's good. Stay awake. The healers are coming, just stay awake." But staying awake was so hard. The darkness was warm and inviting. It would be easy to just let go. His voice cracked with emotion he had never heard from her before. "Don't you dare leave me. I forbid it. As your princess, as your wife, I forbid you to die." A weak laugh escaped his lips. "Can you really forbid death?" "I am trying." He reached up with a shaking hand and touched her face. Her cheek was wet. She was crying. He had never seen a cry before. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't give you more time, more walks, more stars." "You will give me those things. You will live and you will give me all of it." "No, no goodbyes. This is not goodbye. Do you understand me?" The healers arrived then, pushing aside as they went to work. Felt them doing something to his chest, felt strange energy flowing into his body. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was face, beautiful and fierce, and full of something he never thought he would see in those cold silver eyes. Love. She loved him. And he realized, as consciousness slipped away, that he loved her too. The news of the assassination attempt spread across the empire like wildfire. But that was not what caught everyone's attention. What caught everyone's attention was what the human had done. He had thrown himself in front of a weapon to save the princess. He had nearly died protecting her. No had ever done such a thing. In their culture, survival was paramount. Self-sacrifice was illogical. But the human had done it without hesitation. In hospital rooms and council chambers, in common halls and private quarters, they talked. They debated. They argued about what this meant. And slowly, quietly, something began to change. The human was not just a political tool anymore. He was a hero. And the princess who refused to leave his bedside was proving that maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about a great many things. Woke in a white room that smelled of medicine and flowers. For a moment, he did not remember where he was or what had happened. Then the pain came rushing back, and with it, the memories. The assassins, the weapon, throwing himself in front of. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. Every muscle ached. His chest felt like someone had placed a heavy stone on it. "Don't move." His voice came from somewhere to his right. He turned his head slowly and found her sitting in a chair beside his bed. She looked exhausted. Her white hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled. She had clearly been there for a long time. "How long?" he asked. His voice was rough and weak. 8 days, you nearly died. The healers said they had never seen such damage. Your human body is fragile." "But I'm alive." "Yes, you are alive." Her voice cracked slightly. "I almost lost you. I'm sorry I worried you." Stood abruptly and turned away from him. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled, but he could hear the emotion underneath. "You should not have done that. You should not have put yourself between me and the weapon. Your life is not worth less than mine. I couldn't let them hurt you." "Why?" She spun back to face him, and he saw tears threatening to fall from her silver eyes. "Why would you do that? We barely know each other. Our marriage is political. You owe me nothing." Looked at her for a long moment. Then he said simply, "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Stared at him, her expression frozen. "You what?" "I love you. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But somewhere between the gardens and the stars and all those quiet walks, I fell in love with you." She was shaking. He could see it in her hands and the trembling of her shoulders. "You cannot say such things." "Why not?" Because. She struggled to find words. Humans are supposed to be temporary. You were supposed to go back to Earth after the treaty was fulfilled. You were supposed to leave. Do you want me to leave? No, the word burst out of her before she could stop it. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shocked by her own reaction. Smiled despite the pain. Good, because I don't want to leave either. Approached his bed slowly, carefully, as if she was afraid he might disappear. She sat on the edge, and when she looked at him, her silver eyes were filled with a vulnerability he had never seen before. I do not understand these feelings, she whispered. They are overwhelming, terrifying. My whole life I was taught to control my emotions, to be cold, to be perfect. But with you I cannot be any of those things. With you I am just me. And that's enough, you are enough. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. Her skin was cool, but there was warmth in the gesture. I think I love you too, she said quietly. I do not fully understand what that means, but I know that when you were dying, I felt like I was dying too. I know that the thought of losing you was more painful than anything I have ever experienced. Then we're in this together. Yes, together. For a long moment, they simply stayed like that, close and connected, then pulled back and wiped her eyes. There is something else you should know, she said. While you were unconscious, my father conducted an investigation. The assassins were not foreign enemies. They were. Your own people tried to kill you. They were members of an old faction. They believe that the peace treaty with humanity was a mistake. They think our empire has grown weak by accepting aliens as equals. His expression darkened, so they wanted to end the treaty by killing you. By killing me and blaming it on humans, it would have restarted the war. What happened to them? The ones who survived the attack are in custody. They will be tried and executed. My father has declared their faction illegal. Paused. But that is not the important part. What's the important part? The people's reaction. When they learned what happened, when they learned what you did for me, there was an outpouring of support. Not just for me, but for you. Citizens sent flowers and messages to the palace. They prayed in the temples for your recovery. They called you the human who loved our princess. Was stunned, they did that for me. You have become a symbol of what our two species can be together. Your sacrifice showed them something they had never seen before. Selfless love, pure devotion. They do not fully understand it, but they admire it. He did not know what to say. He had never wanted to be a symbol. He had just wanted to protect the woman he loved. There is more, continued. My father wishes to speak with you when you are well enough. The Emperor, what does he want? I do not know, but he has never requested a private audience with you before. Whatever he has to say, it must be important. 2 weeks later was well enough to walk. The healers had done remarkable work. His wound was healing faster than any human doctor could have managed. He was still weak, still tired, but he was alive. He made his way to the throne room at his side. She had insisted on accompanying him, and he had not argued. Having her near gave him strength. The emperor sat on his throne, ancient and imposing, but there was something different in his expression today. The cold indifference was still there, but there was something else too, something that might have been respect. Human, the emperor said, come forward. Walked to the base of the throne and bowed as he had been taught. Your Imperial Majesty. You saved my daughter's life. Yes, Your Majesty. You nearly died protecting her. Yes. Why? It was the same question everyone kept asking him, and he gave the same answer he always gave. Because I love her. The emperor studied him for a long moment. The do not love, we form bonds based on logic and advantage. We choose partners who strengthen our bloodlines and our power. What you describe is foreign to us. Perhaps that is why your daughter was so surprised by it. A ghost of a smile crossed the emperor's ancient face. You are bold, human. Most would not dare speak to me this way. I mean no disrespect, Your Majesty. I am simply telling the truth. Yes, I believe you are. The Emperor leaned back in his throne. Your original agreement stated that you would remain married to my daughter for 10 years. After that, you would be free to return to Earth. His heart tightened. I remember. I am prepared to release you from that agreement now. You have done more than enough for the treaty. The peace between our peoples is secure. If you wish to return home, I will arrange transport immediately. The offer hung in the air, felt tense beside him. She said nothing, but he could feel her fear. Your Majesty said carefully, may I speak freely? You may. I do not wish to return to Earth. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. Oh. When I came here, I thought I was sacrificing my life for my people. I thought I would spend 10 miserable years in an alien palace, surrounded by beings who despised me. I was prepared to be unhappy. And now I have found something I never expected to find. I have found a home. I have found love. I have found a purpose beyond duty. Took a deep breath. I do not wish to leave, Your Majesty. I wish to stay, not for the treaty, not for politics, for... The throne room was silent. Every noble, every guard, every servant held their breath. Then the Emperor spoke. My daughter has told me that she loves you. Until recently, I did not believe her. I did not think she was capable of such feelings. I raised her to be cold as I was raised, as my father was raised before me. I thought it was strength. He paused, and for just a moment, he looked old and tired and filled with regret. I was wrong. True strength is not the absence of feeling. True strength is feeling deeply and choosing to act anyway. You have shown me that, human. You have shown all of us. He rose from his throne, a motion that clearly took effort. Then he did something that no emperor had done in centuries. He descended the steps and stood before as an equal. If you wish to stay, the emperor said, then you will stay, not as a political hostage, not as a symbol, as my daughter's husband, true and real. Could barely speak, Your Majesty. The treaty terms are dissolved. You are free to leave whenever you choose, but if you choose to stay, you will do so with the full rights of a member of the royal family. Grab's hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I choose to stay, said, for as long as she will have me. Forever, said quietly, I will have you forever. The emperor nodded once, a gesture of approval that meant more than any words could express. Then he returned to his throne. The ceremony of true binding will be held in 1 month, he announced to the court. The union between Princess of the Empire and Lieutenant of Earth will be recognized throughout the galaxy. Let no one question its validity. As they left, the throne room was trembling with emotion. She pulled into a quiet alcove and held him tightly. I did not think he would accept it, she whispered. I thought he would force you to leave. I thought I would lose you. You're not going to lose me, said, holding her back. Not ever, not now. Promise me. I promise. And in that moment, surrounded by cold stone and silver light, something warm and bright was born. A bond that would reshape 2 worlds and prove that love was not a weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. The ceremony of true binding was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. It was held in the grand plaza of the capital city, under the purple sky and 3 moons. Millions watched in person. Billions more watched through broadcasts that reached every corner of the galaxy. Stood at the altar, wearing a suit that blended human and traditions. It was dark blue, almost black, with silver patterns that traced across the fabric like stars. He was nervous, but not afraid. He had never been more certain of anything in his life. The crowd fell silent as appeared. She walked down the long aisle slowly, gracefully, her white hair flowing behind her like a river of moonlight. Her dress was the color of starlight, and it moved with her as if it was alive. She was beautiful beyond words, and when her silver eyes met his, felt his heart stop. This was really happening. The sham marriage that had been meant to end a war was becoming something real, something permanent. The priest, an ancient elder who had served the royal family for 300 years, spoke the words of binding. They were different from the first ceremony. These words were not about politics or treaties. They were about souls joining together, about two beings choosing to walk the same path for the rest of their lives. When it came time for to speak, he had memorized the traditional vows. But when he opened his mouth, something else came out. He said, "When I first came to this world, I thought I knew what sacrifice meant. I thought I understood duty, but I didn't understand anything. You taught me what it means to truly care about another person. You taught me that strength isn't about fighting battles or winning wars. It's about opening your heart, even when you're afraid." He took her hands in his. They were warm now. She was warm now. "I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to be honest, even when honesty is hard. I promise to love you through the cold days and the warm ones. And I promise to never, ever let you feel alone again." His eyes were shining. When she spoke, her voice trembled with emotion that would have been impossible for her just a year ago. "My people have lived for thousands of years, but we have forgotten how to truly live. We have built an empire of ice, cold and perfect and empty. You came from a world of chaos and passion and beautiful imperfection, and you showed me what we were missing." She lifted his hand and pressed it to her heart. "I was a princess made of stone. You made me human. Not literally, of course, but in all the ways that matter. You taught me to feel. You taught me to love. You gave me something more precious than all the power in the galaxy." "What's that?" he asked softly. "Hope." The priest completed the ceremony, binding their hands together with a silver cord that represented their union. The crowd erupted in cheers, something that had never happened at a royal wedding before. Did not cheer, did not show emotion in public. But things were changing. The empire was changing, and it had all started with one human and one princess who had learned to see past their differences. As they kissed, the three moons aligned overhead, casting a perfect light on the plaza below. Later, the astronomers would say it was a remarkable coincidence, but those who were there knew better. The universe itself was celebrating. The reception was held in the palace gardens, which had been transformed into a wonderland of lights and music. Human and guests mingled together, many of them meeting for the first time. There were awkward moments, cultural misunderstandings, things lost in translation. But there was also laughter, curiosity, and genuine connection. Admiral Park had come from Earth for the occasion. He found standing near a fountain, watching the celebration with a smile on his face. "Lieutenant," the Admiral said. "No, I suppose I should call you Prince now." Laughed, "Please don't. That makes me sound ridiculous. You've done something extraordinary, son. Not just the treaty, not just surviving. You've changed the way two civilizations see each other. That's not something that happens every day." "I didn't set out to change anything, sir. I just fell in love." "Maybe that's why it worked." The Admiral clapped him on the shoulder. "Your mother would be proud. I spoke to her before the ceremony. She's watching the broadcast on Earth. She cried through the whole thing." His throat tightened. "I miss her." "She knows, but she also knows you're where you're supposed to be. We all do." Later that night, when the guests had finally gone home and the palace was quiet, and stood together on the balcony of their shared chambers, the city spread out below them, glittering with lights. The sky above was filled with stars. "Are you happy?" asked. "More than I ever thought possible," replied. "Are you?" "I am, but I am also afraid." "Of what?" She was quiet for a moment. "Change is difficult for my people. We have done things the same way for. The old ways are comfortable, even when they are wrong. There are still those who do not accept our union, who do not accept humans. There always will be, but change doesn't happen all at once. It happens one person at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time." You really believe that? I have to. If I didn't, I'd give up. And I'm not going to give up. Not on us. Not on our peoples. Not ever. Leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. My father spoke to me before the ceremony. He said something surprising. What? He said that when he forced me into that first marriage, he thought he was sacrificing my happiness for the good of the empire. He expected me to be miserable. He expected you to be miserable. He thought that was the price of peace. And now he says he was a fool. He says that the best peace is built on hope, not suffering. He says. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was thick with emotion. He says that I have found something he never did, true partnership, true love, and he is grateful. The emperor said that. He is old and tired and full of regret. I think watching us has reminded him of all the things he could have been, if only he had been brave enough to feel. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars, then said, "What happens now?" Now we live, we build, we show our peoples that there is another way. Turned to face him, her silver eyes shining. The war lasted 5 years. The peace will last forever. I am certain of it. How can you be certain? Because we will not let it fail. Because we will spend every day proving that love is stronger than fear. Because we will have children who know both worlds, who will grow up without the hatred that poisoned their parents' generation. Children's heart skipped. Is that possible between our species? Smiled, and there was a secret in that smile. The healers have been studying human and biology since the treaty was signed. They believe it is possible, difficult but possible. You've been planning this. I have been hopping. There is a difference. Pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Then we'll hope together, for children, for peace, for a future that neither of our peoples could have imagined a year ago. Together, agreed, always together. Years later, historians would debate the exact moment when the galaxy changed. Some said it was the treaty. Some said it was the assassination attempt. Some said it was the wedding. But the truth was simpler than any of them realized. The galaxy changed when one human soldier refused to hate, when he looked at a cold princess and saw a lonely woman, when he offered kindness without expecting anything in return, when he chose love over fear, even when love seemed impossible. Never became a politician. He never led armies or made great speeches. He was just a man who loved his wife and raised his children and showed everyone around him that there was another way to live. But that was enough. That was more than enough. Because in the end, the greatest power in the universe was not found in weapons or wealth or ancient bloodlines. It was found in the simple act of opening your heart to someone different from yourself. It was found in the courage to say, "I love you." And they who had forgotten how to love remembered. Slowly, carefully, one heart at a time, they remembered. The sham marriage ended a war. But the real marriage changed everything. And when held his firstborn child in his arms, a beautiful baby with her mother's silver eyes and her father's warm smile, he knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. This was not the ending he had expected when he agreed to marry an alien princess. It was something better. It was a beginning.